Hello, good afternoon. Okay. Um, so today we're just rounding up ahead of the essay on Monday. The unannounced reading for today is Levine's Materialism and Qualia, the Explanatory Gap. For your guys' purposes, we've actually already covered many of the points in Levine's important article along the way already. But if it does sound interesting to you for writing the essay after the class, that's the thing to look at. It's in the Chambers collection, Materialism and Qualia, the Explanatory Gap. And the addendum is good too. So, the essay is due on Monday. We are all agog. Any last questions about that? Okay. It's invigorating to see those keen, alert faces alive with the quest for truth. Okay. And the reading for Monday, we are really moving onto a different level after Monday. You know, when you're playing a game, you go up a level. We kind of go up a level on Monday. And we'll look at a paper by Jaspers called Meaningful Psychic Connections. This is quite a difficult paper. I think it's much the most difficult thing we've looked at so far. The good news is that although I'll send you that this afternoon, but although I'll send you the whole of his chapter, I'm only suggesting you read the first 4.5 pages. And with Jasper stuff, it's always much better to read just a couple of paragraphs and have them absolutely mastered than it is to read a whole bunch of it quickly. So take your time with it, and if you don't get through the first 4.5 pages, then that's okay. Just take the time to get through it paragraph by paragraph. Okay. Well, today we're going to review most of the main ideas we've been looking at and suggest some new ways of stating them. So we've been looking at this idea of imaginative understanding versus scientific explanation. And the whole puzzle of the mind and brain is to understand how those two types of understanding are related. So I'm going to start out by looking at what those two kinds of understanding are and how they might be connected, and then go into physicalism, which has played a big role in what we've done already, and suggest a new way of thinking about what physicalism is. Okay, so a natural way to think about it with imaginative understanding versus scientific explanation is that these are different spaces that the understanding might inhabit. So they're just two different genres of explanation. You can understand someone imaginatively. You can understand them by describing them in terms of the scientific laws that they fall under. And those are just different things. That's a natural reaction. But what does it mean, imaginative understanding? What are you doing when you put yourself in someone else's shoes? There are actually two quite different models. I think these are two quite different models you could have here for what's going on when you imagine being in someone else's place. One thing is that you're kind of picturing, you're getting qualitatively what it's like for the other person. The other picture is that you're using yourself as a model of the other person. Did we have this example of model airplanes, wind tunnels before? No? Okay. It doesn't matter if we did, everyone's forgotten it, so, okay. Suppose you're trying to understand how an airplane is going to behave in wind. One thing you can do is use the actual airplane, just take it into a tornado or whatever and see what happens. That is kind of expensive. Another thing you can do is have a scientific theory of how your airplane is going to behave in turbulence, and that is a different thing. But it's also possible to just get a model, a scale model of your airplane, and put it in a wind tunnel and see what happens to the scale model, you take it that the scale model is going to behave pretty much the way the regular airplane is going to behave. You're going to take it that the scale model is functionally just like the big airplane. So if it manages fine in the wind tunnel, maybe the big airplane will manage fine in the wind tunnel. So you could think about what's going on with imagining another person's point of view as using yourself as a kind of scale model of the other person. I mean, we do have that kind of imaginative capacity. Suppose you're, suppose you take some friend of yours right now. Imagine your friend. Just take some arbitrary friend that you like to think about and think about them right now. And imagine they're sitting at home, working alone on a summer's afternoon, and then they hear footsteps in the basement. Okay, what do? Do they go down and confront the person? Do they call the police? Do they grab a baseball bat and head for the basement? What does your friend do? Put up your hand if you were able to answer that kind of question about your friend. Some of you, yeah. I mean, life would be pretty difficult if we couldn't predict other people in that way. So if you ask, how did you do that? How did you know what your friend would do? The natural answer is, this is only a guess, but the natural answer is you used yourself as a kind of scale model of the other person. You thought, suppose it was me sitting in that basement, sitting in that house, hearing footsteps in the basement. What would I do? If your friend's braver than you, you might factor that in to your simulation. If your friend's more timorous than you might factor that into the simulation. You see what I mean? So you take yourself as a kind of scale model of your friend, and you see what you do. You factor it a little bit. You weight it a little bit with factors like temperament, and then you see what's going to happen to them. So if you think of something like this as your functional organization, you've got a belief box, you've got a desire box, you've got your decision making, and then your action output. That's you, right? You've all got a functional structure kind of like that. Beliefs, desires, actions, reasoning. Okay, so usually what happens is the input to the system is like perception. What you see is you look around you. You think, am I going to get a coffee? What will I do next? You use that as your input to decide what to do. But if you could also take the system offline and put pretend inputs in, like pretend as your input that you're at home, pretend you got a perception of hearing footsteps in the basement, then just run your own functional architecture on that pretend input, and then you want to get a pretend output, grabbing the baseball bat or whatever it is. Yeah? So that's different to imagining the qualia the other person is going to have. That's different to imagining their conscious states. Simulation in this sense is just using your own box and arrow structure to model someone else's box and arrow structure. If you've got robots, if we have a whole bunch of robots roving around, and they're not conscious, but they have complex functional structures, you might actually want to give the robots the ability to simulate each other in that sense, because it might be very handy for a robot to be able to predict what another robot will do. If you see what I mean. Yeah? So you could simulate in that sense without consciousness being involved at all. But maybe we do have something like this anyhow. Maybe we have that ability to simulate one another, and that's practically very useful just in predicting what other people are going to do. I mean, if you're driving and you're thinking, well, what is this person doing in the car ahead of you? Then what you're trying to do a lot of the time is say, well, if that was me coming up to that crash ahead, I would be moving to the left right now. So you use that every day to predict what other people are doing. But there seems to be a different conception of putting yourself in the other person's shoes, that really does require consciousness, that really does require that you not just be a robot.